Eid Mubarak to the Muslim community. Religious equality, equity, and freedom in Trinidad and Tobago. On the line with us is a representative from the Mahasabha, executive member of the Sanatana Dharma Mahasabha, Devant Maharaj. And panel, we have Reverend Cyril Paul, Dr. Jerome Teelucksingh, and Imam Ibrahim Asif Ali. Gentlemen, before we went to break, Devant did raise the issue of prayer in terms of official state functions. Now, some may argue that you go to a state function and you have a prayer from every single major faith in Trinidad and Tobago. Some may say that if you live in a multicultural, a melting pot as they have termed it, why continue this? It just creates further divisions, and it's as though, okay, every single body has to be represented. Why can't we just see it as a Trinidad and Tobago thing? Dr. Teelucksingh, I'd like to get your views on that.
Hema, that is a very interesting question, particularly as you know in the United States, they have removed prayer from the schools because various faiths have felt offended, and I believe that Devant's point is a valid point, but maybe we should decide in the parliament and at functions how many religions would be represented. As you know, some of you all might know that we have some Sikhs living in El Dorado. So many of the Sikhs might say that their religion, some of the Jews might feel that their religion is not being represented. So it's a valid point, and maybe we would probably need a universal prayer. I want to believe if we could devise a prayer that could touch on the common grounds of all religions: righteous conduct, purity of heart, peace, forgiveness, good versus evil. Maybe we could come up with a prayer, but I don't believe we should eliminate prayer from the parliament or public functions, because that whole idea of prayer is very important to get a mind frame in a good setting.
Now, Devant, I know that you're the one that raised the issue. Do you think that we should accept a universal prayer, or do you still hold firm to the view that each faith should be represented?
I think that's a miscommunication. Because we, as part of the IRO, had always lobbied for universal prayer in the parliament. And you will recall our universal prayer was actually developed and submitted to the parliament. Reverend Paul could attest to that. And remember that he was asked to deliver an address to the parliament, and afterwards the parliament asked that all addresses be screened beforehand because of the message that he delivered on that occasion. But these are some of the symbols that we have. You had Professor Teelucksingh talking about the American example, but of removing prayer from the school, but he fails to cite the inclusion of the Vedic hymns at the opening of the Senate and the Congress only this year. Virtually every single U.S. state is now including, in addition to a Christian prayer and a Jewish prayer, a Hindu prayer in the various congressional districts. So it's happening with the inclusion of prayer at various levels. But however, we in Trinidad support a universal prayer. But we have the continuous imposition of Christian symbols and iconography as a throwback to the colonial days, and those who inherited the apparatus of state continue to hang on to that. We have, for example, the Self-Help Commission recently being exposed in the parliament a year and a half ago, showing that all of their grants of religious denomination went to Christian groups. And only when that lobby was exposed, then you had some Hindus and Muslims benefiting. You want to talk about religious intolerance? We have neglected to point out the continuous assault that the Hindu community experienced. Those who wish to save their souls, and every Sunday and Saturday knocking on their door, telling them that their way of life is irreligious, and they are damned to the hellfires if they do not convert. And they want to preach this hate against the Hindu community on the airwaves, so much so that the Telecom Authority had to include a clause on religion on the recently proposed broadcast code. And because of that clause, we have some Christian fundamentalist groups lobbying for the ousting of that clause. So it appears that there are still some who believe they have a franchise, an exclusive franchise on God. And because of that, they foster a sense of intolerance for everybody else who do not fit in that mindset. We have a minister of government standing up in the House saying she's a Christian with a capital C. One wonders if a Hindu were to stand up and say that in the very same place, if he would be given the same leeway as this minister was given.
Well, I know.
And one has to wonder if the Christian with the capital C, that bias of the dispensation of the state largesse would be reflected as well. Remember that continuously we have the Indian groups complaining that they are not getting their fair share from the Ministry of Culture.
Well, that's the issue I want to bring up in a little while, but I would like to ask the Imam that. Do you feel as though society is skewed in favor of maybe a Christian point of view?
Yeah, when we look at what's unfolding on a daily basis, we want to believe that. And I really appreciate the views expressed by Brother Levant. And we need to really work towards establishing a universal prayer where we could accommodate everyone in that. Rather than, sometimes you go functions and everyone have to come up, and yet still down the line, someone might be left out. Sometimes you really look indiscreet. And
yeah, one or two comments on that.
Sure.
A few things to bear in mind. One, of course, is, I'm talking from the IRO perspective now. The IRO has always been in favor of us working for an universal prayer, which we can use at a function. So instead of having 10 people going up there to pray, one person could pray. Now, another thing about that too is that from my experience over the years on the IRO and in the religious community, the plural religious community, I've realized that there are some of the brethren and sistren who have some measure of difficulty in stepping out of the religious box, prayer-wise, so to speak. In other words, they have trouble being flexible with a universal prayer. And that is an area we have to work on, to try to encourage them to pray universally. And then the other thing I want to mention too is that when requests are made of the IRO for blessings and prayers at various functions, they tell you that they want a Hindu, they want a Muslim, they want a Christian. And even though they say they want a Christian, they go on Catholic and an Anglican and a Pentecostal. So we have to say, hey, hold it, they are all Christians.
But I know, Devan brought up the issue in Parliament with religion and politics, and we see more and more. But I know that one of the MPs on the opposition side did get up and poke some fun, saying he was a Hindu with a big H. So the issue, they get played up. But we see more and more religion and politics being intertwined, and this is something I've always wondered about. Devan, your views on this recent trend, and we saw it a lot in the last election, where scriptures were being quoted, quotes from the Bhagavad Gita, most of the religious texts, all of the politicians will get up and use it. Some say that religion and politics cannot exist, and some say that it's intertwined. Your views on that, Devant?
Mahatma Gandhi, I think, put it best. He says that religion and politics cannot be separated. And I think it will be foolish for people to really say that. And it's happening all over the U.S. You have the Christian right supporting one particular political candidate as opposed to the other. And Trinidad is no different. We have the same emotions in terms of politics and religion. I think it's how we manage that and where we demarcate what is acceptable and what is not. Clearly, I think it's unacceptable for a minister to stand up and say she's a Christian with a capital C in Parliament, unprovoked, unrelated to the issue. Just to mobilize troops along that line. For a prime minister to be quoting scripture and verse at a drop of a hat, announcing that he's a born-again Christian, imposing his Christian values to stamp out, let's say, an industry such as the gaming industry, because it is his value as opposed to the country's different views, I think are unacceptable.
But even some can say that all politicians quote their various religions. It's something that has become...
No, nothing is wrong with that. But when you use that in inappropriate times, when you use those values there to dictate public policy, it has to be frowned upon. So the Prime Minister is a born-again Christian. Fine for him. But when he imposes those values on the rest of us who may not share those values, I think we have to stand up and voice our objections. Okay. His position regarding the gaming industry, I think, is fair comment on this issue. he has single-handedly taken this position to outlaw casino gambling in 4 years and close down the state agency that runs it because of his bias. What wonders about the horse racing industry? That's next. One has to wonder, suppose tomorrow he decides his religious values say that alcohol and smoking isn't good as well.
Well, I know that argument was brought up before, Devon, but we do have to take a very short break. When we come back, I want to get the views of other panelists on that question of religion and politics. Stay with us, Trinidad and Tobago.